Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It's Friday, December 1st. First day of December. That means 24 more days to make sure you get all your kids and grandkids and everybody else their freaking Christmas presents. Bah humbug, right? No, not really. As far as for me, this is for the kids, the holidays and stuff, um, and getting and spending time with family. You know, you only go around once, they say. So I thought today we'd talk about kind of like a mechanic's checklist. What routines, do you have for certain things? And then I'll try to touch on some of the comments. I'm going to start calling it Fan Mail Friday. Not really. But Jason had a good point, and I want to follow up with him. All right, so stay tuned. So welcome back to the channel. One of the biggest things that you have to do with any shop is to develop a routine. And that routine, comes with time of knowing X, Y, and Z. And then you also have to match that routine up with dealing with customers, and then dealing with even with other employees if you're a mechanic, or if you're the shop owner or manager, having to deal with employees and trying to get them to follow the same thing every time, right? But what a lot of shop owners fail to do, and managers, is to sit down and talk with the mechanics to come up with what's a good routine that is workable and that we can all agree on. Because I'll be honest with you, a lot of times shop owners and managers will just take a routine that they saw somewhere else and slap it down and say, this is what we're going to be doing. And that doesn't work because you're not asking for any input. I mean, if that makes any sense. See, if you want your crew to do the best work possible, your crew has to have some say in the processing. If they don't feel like they have any say, they'll blow you off. And if anything, I've seen employees that would just downright put the screws right to you. I mean, when I say that, not to me. When I worked up to the mines, I watched employees do that, where they'd come down with a list of procedures of how to do X, Y, and Z. And for us experienced miners, I look at the list, I'm like, who wrote this up? Who has this much time on their hands to try to write this sheet up of how we should drill and load and blast? And none of it's true. There's no way it can be done in that order, that safely. So that's the biggest thing, is having a routine in the shop that everybody kind of follows. I mean, I touched on it here a week ago, I think it was, of when we pull a dipstick out of anything and lay it across the flywheel, that's a cue to anybody else in the shop that that girl has no oil on it. Do not start it. At the very least, check the oil, because the dipstick is laying up. But you need to get yourself into a routine where if you have more than one employee or more than one person working on equipment, that everybody understands if they have to step in and take over for the other person. All right, so I know that this person has done this, this, and this. I'll jump to this. But if you get, a younger mechanic that hasn't got a lot of experience, as you bring in, compression may be the last thing on his mind of checking. Because we get into this, I assumed he did it. Well, the thing is, with assumed, it makes an ass out of you and me. So when it comes to those things, a lot of times, it's check and recheck. How long does it take, to throw a compression tester on a unit? Because as Jason pointed out with the customer there, which I'm going to get to, that's the first, because if you don't have that, you aren't going to have anything else. And the sad thing about this day and age is for most equipment, especially anything that's 10 years and older, it's not worth the rebuild. It's not. I mean, even if the customer got them for free, is it really worth the rebuild? But see, that I leave up to the customer when it comes to, do I keep going or do I stop? I'll keep going to where I would do it to my own, and then I stop. Talk to the customer. If they want to keep going, hell yeah, we'll take the money. But it's going to be with honesty with your customer and making sure that they understand. When they get done, they may have a rototiller, but they probably, for not much more, they could have gone and bought a new one. I mean, I can see if it's the older Troy builts, those they're a beast. But Claude's got one of those. And the engine went on it. And what he ended up doing, I mean, this guy is phenomenal when it comes to making things work. But he had this snowblower that he had bought. It was on the roadside. He picked it up pretty cheap. The gal was moving or something. So we bought it. I've never seen that man use a snowblower except for down here at the shop. But he ended up buying it thinking he could use a snowblower. But what he did with it was he started using it around the walk in the buildings. But when it came spring and he wanted to till up his garden, he'd take the engine off the snowblower, stick it on the Troy-built tiller, and till up his garden. And when it got the garden all done, as it started getting towards fall, he'd take that snowblower engine back off, and then he would put it back on the snowblower, so he had the snowblower for the winter. Got to give him credit. But in the end, your job is to save your customer money, heartache, and time. Now, you can't help them if they've already spent money on buying what we talked about yesterday, a Frankenstein machine, a piece of crap. But you can stop the bleeding by saying, look, this is not worth putting the time and money into, because you're going to be in over your head. You cut your losses right now. So we either do one or two things here. Okay, so the one thing is we do pick-up and drop-offs, all right? So that means we go out and we try to set it to a certain time where we're not traveling one direction for just one customer. We try to get it so that, like Mondays are over here, Tuesdays, because, I mean, the closest grocery store for me right now is 12 miles away. So, I mean, you're traveling distance. And we basically charge just gas and a little bit extra for maintenance on the trucks, whereas the other shops charge a lot. And then the other way is the customer brings it to us and drops it off. And most often the case, it's after hours. See, we work till 3 here at this shop, but we start, at 6:30 in the morning. And once it gets 3 o'clock, I head up, feed the cows, and get nestled in for the night. I'll be honest with you, I've always been that way. I go to bed anywhere between 7:30 and 8, but I'm up every morning 3:30, 4 o'clock. I'm still on that farmer's time of dairy farming it, 40 years ago, and it just sticks with you. Plus, I'm what they would classify as a morning person. I love mornings. I hate evenings, but I love mornings. I love seeing the sunrise and all that good stuff. So we got two different ways they come in, and that is we pick them up and bring them in, or the customer drops them off after hours. We don't normally do compression checks out in the field when we're picking them up, because most times we're picking them up, customer's not there anyways. So we just get there and get back. You know, no dilly-dallying around unless the customer is there. But 90 some percent customer's not there. They've left us, the garage is open, just going to get the piece of equipment and get it serviced. And so we pick it up and we bring it back before we even start anything with it. A lot of times what Claude will do is, if it won't start on its own, he'll hit it with carb cleaner, see if it will fire, and then if it will fire, then it's possible, you know. But I've seen stuff fire on carb cleaner that didn't have enough compression to pull fuel and run, you know, the way it should. But you need to have a routine in the shop. The minute that piece of equipment hits here, you know, there has to be some kind of a routine so that no matter who is working on what, everybody is under the understanding that these are the steps we take, you know. And compression is one, and then fire is two, because if there's no fire, then you could be looking at either a coil, bad switch. If you're looking at lawnmowers and generators, safety switches, there could be a whole barrage of things. So we go with spark second. Fuel is third. You know, it just seems like everything that comes in here has got the ethanol fuel, which for the newer stuff isn't bad, but if you let it sit there, it's like having a gas can sit there for 6 months of ethanol fuel. You can shake the hell out of it, but I should do this for you guys, or do this at home as an experiment. Take a mason jar and fill it 3/4 of the way with the fuel. You'll start seeing it within hours start to separate, and your gas will be on top. Your ethanol and water will be at the bottom. And you will be surprised at how much ethanol draws moisture into that mason jar. Leave the top open so it can breathe. Put it out someplace where it's, you know, not in the house where it's sneaking everything all up. So compression, spark, fuel, air. Those are the four that we're looking for in order for that to function correctly. Now, we could do compression on it, and if the compression is low, does that mean the engine needs to be rebuilt? Absolutely not. I would say close to 75-80% of the stuff that comes in that has low compression and has overhead valves, that those valves are out of adjustment. We had one. Well, we've had more than one, but I know one that was a brand new Craftsman. And the guy said it was popping, and then he couldn't get it to start. So he dropped it off after hours and wanted to know if we could take a look at it. I said, yeah, absolutely. So the first thing we did was threw a compression tester on it. There wasn't enough compression to run. Our second move was popping the valve cover off, because this is going to be your culprit a lot of times with low compression. It's not going to be that the engine is bad. It's simply going to mean that you have to check a little farther. All right. So with saying that, if one of the valves, exhaust or the intake valve, is not working properly, is not shutting tight, then it's going to throw off your compression in that engine. But on that Craftsman, the actual nut and bolt thing that goes in to hold the valves in place laid in the bottom of that valve cover, in a sealed valve cover. Someone at the factory must have been either a Friday afternoon or Monday morning machine, as we usually call it. But this was brand spanking new. And just simply getting the valves back into adjustment took care of all of our problems with it. So going from the basics of looking at the four things, now we're kind of stepping a little further, saying, all right, so if we go to the first step in compression, we don't have compression, do not toss the machine as scrap metal, okay? Start looking a little further. Valve cover. If it's got overhead valves on it, then, like I say, I've seen new, and I've seen, ones that went for 4 or 5 years have the same issue with the valves out of adjustment. And while I'm talking about valves out of adjustment, when you get a machine in, a riding lawnmower, to turn it over and it acts like it hangs up in a certain spot, you have to spin it by and then hit it again. 9 times out of 10, that's valves. If the valves are not adjusted correctly, it will act like it's coming up against the wall, which it is, because the valve can't open and close correctly. So when you do your preliminary compression, no compression, let's go to valves. Pop the valve cover. And don't worry about, a lot of times it's got a cork gasket in it. Don't be afraid to put a little bit of silicone around it and put it back on. Because, I think it was great when they first come out with them, but a lot of times we get older machines where they're leaking oil out of that valve cover onto the exhaust, causing it to smoke, and you can smell oil burning. And people thinking that their engine is bad when it's just simply that the cork gasket has failed in the valve cover. Well, so we know that valves can play a big part on deceiving us with compression. Now, if we go to fire, compression is good. We go to fire and we don't have fire. Someone jump to a coil. Coil is what causes it to fire based on its positioning on the flywheel. And so now you got to get in deeper because you're not getting fire. On a riding lawnmower, here's the easy trick, is if you have a single cylinder or even a twin cylinder, and a lot of your walk behind units, right on the coil itself, there's a small wire that comes in and plugs in, and that's the grounding wire. If you unplug that and it starts right up and stays running, then you know that the engine is fine, that you have to, and the coil is fine. You have to start working your way back from that whip. And a lot of times it could be a safety switch defective or stuck. You got your seat switch, you got your pedal switch, you got your motor deck switch, whether it's engaged, disengaged. But, even the key switch could be bad. But since we went and unhooked the small wire off the coil, and then we jump started it across the solenoid, because when you do that, the key, but you can cross solenoid, start it up. If that takes care of it, then you need to start eliminating, is there a fuse in the system that's blown? Safety switch, on and off switch, key switch, on and on. So now we got compression, and now we figured out what's going on with fire, so we got fire. So the next thing is fuel, and fuel, each of us does something a little different. I mean, here at this shop, we just dump it, and what bothers me is when you get a customer that brings in a generator like we picked up the other day, and it's right full right to the top, and it hasn't been started in 4 years, so the fuel is bad. I know there are some, and Jason could probably help me out on this, but I know that there are some additives out there, or Amos or Ed, to fuel to make it last longer, but the best I've seen is 6 months. If you get stuff that's less than that, put it into a gas can, pour it into your vehicle. Your vehicle won't. I mean, shoot, all these newer ones are supposed to be made to run on water, right? Well, so that's the basis of having a setup thing, and then you need to be able to, if you don't have compression, have somehow like an arrow pointing, what do I check next? And if the valves are good, what next? And it's just like fire. Is the coil bad, or does the flywheel rusted up from sitting and a little bit of emery cloth on it? Is the gap correct between the flywheel and the coil? That could be bad. It could be out of adjustment. But you have to know all these things to check for these things. And a lot of people that are trying to be mechanics these days don't realize that, because nobody ever told them. Right? Has no compression, it's junk. Wait a minute. No, it's not. Just because we don't have compression, we go here. And if we can't get the compression to come up by adjusting the valves, then it's see you later. But a lot of times we can get the compression up by just adjusting the valves and getting them set right. So I hope some of that makes sense to you guys, that are just starting out. You do-it-yourselfers, I guess, and the guys that are just wanting to get into a repair shop. Don't be quick on tossing the baby out with the bathwater. Have a system in place of what are my steps, and if A is good, then do I go to B and then to C until the end result, which is hopefully the customer paying you, right? Now, Jason, you had mentioned that with that customer that, I'm not going to get the money. I don't care. But I know that it didn't leave her a bad taste in her mouth, because I talked with her for 20 minutes. She swore up and down that the guy that she had working for her said he had them all running. I said, well, I don't know what your guy's telling you, but there's no way these will run. There's no overhead valves on most of them. They're older machines. But she was thankful because she was clueless when it came to that stuff. See, we work on her sister and her dad's stuff all the time. So her dad recommended to have her ship it over to us. And when we dropped it off, that same guy was there. And I said, so you had all these running, huh? He goes, yep. I said, well, not a one of them has got any compression. So let's start here with the snowblower. Let's see you start that right now. Well, I ain't got time. I'm just saying, you told the owner that you had everything here running. I mean, make 10 minutes of your time. Start every one of them. I want to see them run. Let me get my camera out. I knew he couldn't get them started because there was no compression. And the valves were internal. Not much you can do without breaking the engine down. But I know it didn't leave a bad taste in their mouth. Will I get the money? I probably have her dad. Once he finds out that, she went the other direction, he'll, just like this dad, when it comes to my kids, there's not a loan. See, my kids will come to me and say, Dad, can I borrow some X number of dollars? And I say, yeah, you can borrow. But months down the road, they still haven't paid anything back. And I'm like, what do you mean you haven't paid anything back? Well, it was a gift, right? It wasn't a loan. You just gave it to them. And this is how her dad's probably going to end up, being stuck, like I have before. So I'm going to start wrapping this up. I see it's getting to be 24 minutes. I try to keep it so it's not too long. If there's a want or a need of, putting something together that kind of has the breakdown of go to this and to this and to this, I'd be more than happy to show you the way we do it here, and kind of gives you an idea of steps to follow. So on that note, you guys have a great Friday and a great weekend. And if I don't see you before then, see you Monday morning. Have a great day.